everyone, I'm Amanda Niederhauser, aka Jedi Craft Girl, and I'm a fabric designer with Riley Blake Designs. I'm so excited to be here with you today, showing you one of my favorite quilt patterns that I've designed. It's called Charlotte's Garden. So I took my Charlotte's Garden quilt pattern and this fat quarter bundle of Hey Bootiful from Riley Blake Designs. And I made this quilt that's behind me. And I like to call it Charlotte's Spooky Garden. I love that you can take any quilt pattern and add some Halloween fabric and you've got a Halloween quilt, even if its intentions weren't Halloween to begin with. I thought today I would show you how to make the cat block. Sometimes when you look at a block like this, that's not just traditional, you might be a little intimidated or overwhelmed. So I thought I would walk you through how to make this whole cat block so you feel like you can make Charlotte's Spooky Garden or even a wall hanging like this with the block in the middle. So let's get started. I am going to be using my pattern that shows exactly how to cut all of the measurements of each of the cat pieces. And what I love to do is use these design boards. They are fabulous. They come in all different sizes. And I've chosen this one because it's exactly the size I need to lay out my cat block. What I like to do first is lay out the block how the cat would look. So right now, if you looked at this, you would be like, I don't even know what that is. But what I know is this is my cat. Here's his body. And here's his face, and then these are his little ears, and here's his tail, and here's his tail top. That way I know where everything goes, and I'm not constantly referring back to the pattern. Oh wait, this is a 3-inch square. Where does that go? Or what does this one go to? I like to lay it all out so it looks logical. It just makes sewing it together so much faster. With this particular quilt block, we're going to be doing the stitch and flip method, which means we don't have any templates or points that we have to measure, triangles. It's all rectangles and squares. And I'm going to show you how easy it is to make a cat block with just rectangles and squares. I like to start with my largest piece. This is our cat body. And I have the little background square and the large background square. And I've drawn a diagonal line. And this is going to give our cat body its shape. I'm going to use my little cat pins that my friend Bev from Flamingo Toes designed. And I'm going to just pin that in place so it doesn't move because I'm actually going to take this whole thing over to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew right on the diagonal line. All right. Here we go. Nice and easy, just corner to corner. Then I'm going to just take this off and I'm going to flip it around. And I'm going to actually take my pin out for that one because it's a little bit in the way. I'm going to just sew this one corner to corner. So this is going to give our cat its little shape so he doesn't just look like a big giant rectangle. All right, so now I have sewn on the diagonal line. I'm going to take my ruler and I'm just going to trim 1/4 inch away from the seam on both of those, like that. Then I'm going to go over to my pressing station and give it a nice press. So what I like to do is use my mister. If you don't have a mister, you need a mister. It's my favorite thing. And I like to heat press my seams like this first. And then I just fold it back with a nice hot iron, like this, just fold it back. And then I take my clapper and that just absorbs any extra moisture or heat. And it just makes your seams lay really flat, which you want. You don't want bulky seams. All right, so our cat body is all done. All right, so now we're going to assemble his head. So here's his face right here. That doesn't need anything, but we need to do his ears. So for our ears, we have a background piece, and then our ear points are actually these little squares. And what we're going to do is give him an ear here and an ear here. And I have drawn a diagonal line corner to corner and corner to corner. Now you do want to make sure that they're pointing this way because you don't want to give them lopsided ears. You want two pointy cat ears. So I'm going to make sure my diagonal lines are pointing in. So when I sew and fold back, I'm going to have two kitty ears. I'm going to just pin this one to hold it into place while I'm sewing. Maybe. There we go. And then I'm going to just sew on that diagonal. So I'm going to just sew one, and then I'm going to sew the other. No need to press in between. We'll press all at once. So again, with the stitch and flip method, we're going to be trimming a 1/4 inch away from our cat ear. Okay, so we've sewn both of our ear seams, and we're going to do the stitch and flip method. So I've got my 2 ear pieces sewn. I'm going to just trim a 1/4 inch along both seams, making sure I cut the right side. So the cat has ears, so you notice we're going to flip them back. There's his ears. So we're going to give him a little press. So his ears are nice and pointy. Just fold that back. Do you guys love pressing? I love pressing things. Something satisfying about pressing seams. Okay, I'm going to trim those strings off. All right, I use my clapper, and now his ears look perfect. Perfect. Okay. We love cat jokes. All right, so now you can see I have his ears. Now look, he's starting to look like a cat already. See that? We've got his body, and look, just giving him ears turned him right into a cat. What is going to come next is we're going to sew his ears to his face. And I'm just going to sew along here. Sometimes with the stitch and flip method, it's not 100% accurate, but you can fix any inaccuracies in your seam allowance, which is nice. All right, so I'm going to just sew a seam. I'm going to sew his ears to his face. And then we're going to press him. All right, heat set. Flip. So with his ears, I always like to listen to my fabric, which direction it wants to be pressed in. So since these have seams and points, it's wanting to point toward his face. So I would never fight that seam in a million years. So I'm going to press toward his face. Like that. Just trim off the string. There we go. And now he has his little face already. So we're actually going to sew his head to a background piece to give him some space. And then in this row, we have his tail topper. This is the main part of his tail, but this little part, if you'll notice, he has this little like curve in his tail, which means he's happy, right? If a cat has their tail up in the air and it's curved, they're a happy cat. So I'm going to put these 2 pieces on the top of the tail. It looks a little complicated, but again, stitch and flip. I'm going to sew diagonal like this. These ones are parallel, unlike the ears. I'm going to sew right on those lines, and then we're going to flip it over, and he's going to have the little tail topper. Something that is a great tip, especially when using small pieces like this, is if I'm going to be sewing on my sewing machine and I'm going to start at a corner and feeding that in, sometimes this can get sucked into the feed dogs and get jammed up, or even just pulled funny. So I like to just take a little scrap piece of fabric, oftentimes just off my floor, and I like to just sew that, and then you actually just feed this right in like you were chain piecing it. And that just helps the machine, I don't know, it just does the trick. You never have to fight corners, especially on small pieces like this. So I've sewn that seam, and now I'm going to trim, and I'm going to do the same exact thing. And I'm going to use, again, my little leader fabric. And then I'm going to get this all lined up and sew that next diagonal seam. And I'm just gonna feed that right in, line it right up in the center because we're sewing right on that center line. And that just makes all the difference. All right, so now we're gonna trim a 1/4 inch along our diagonal lines, and we're gonna have a little kitty tail, All right, so I've trimmed it and it's barely anything now, but it's gonna make all the difference in our design by giving our cat a little personality. All right, so I'm gonna just heat press, fold that right over, and always give it a little clapper, because that's just makes everyone happy. Okay, so look at, we have our little kitty tail, and that is going to get sewn to this piece of background fabric. And then we're gonna have our whole row done. And then the next part, we're gonna sew this row. So let's finish this top row. I'm gonna just sew this together like that. Nice little seam. It's fun to watch all these squares and rectangles come together and make a cat. I don't even know how many cat blocks I've designed. Quite a few. I have quite a few cat quilts. You can't have too many cat quilts. And I'm always looking for my next cat quilt inspiration. All right, so I've just flipped that over. Make sure I sewed it going the right way. Yes, his tail goes in like that, so we got it on correctly. And now we're gonna just sew these 3 pieces together, just like you would a row of quilt blocks. And then we'll have the cat head row unit finished. All right, let's press, and then we'll work on the cat's body. He's almost done. If I was making the whole quilt, I would probably make this like an assembly line and do all the cat head parts together, all the tail parts. It just goes faster than making one block at a time. So I would actually stack all the cat blocks, layer them up, so then I could just do one after another. And then that really saves time instead of finding them all, laying them all out every time. I would just have them all layered here, and then you could just keep sewing however many you want to make. All right, so our cat head unit is done. He's so cute, but he definitely needs a body, and this part goes pretty fast. First, there's a little curvature in his tail right here, which gives it a little movement. We wouldn't want a square pointy tail, so we want it rounded. So we have another square with a diagonal line. We're gonna just sew right on the diagonal line. Again, I'm gonna just take one of my scraps here, even this triangle that I just cut, which is a handy use for that. And I'm gonna just get it going. I'm gonna make sure I've got the diagonal going in the correct way and just sew right on it. Okay. Then stitch and flip. This is our last angle. We've done all the angles so far. This is our last one. And then everything else is just rectangles, little spritz. Okay, his tail's looking great. Okay, next we're gonna sew the tail to the background unit, which gives us this nice space here in between the tail. All right, I'm gonna press this. Here we go. And then on this one, I am gonna just flip it over like this and just press toward the tail. I'm gonna trim off these strings. I'm just gonna put them onto the floor and clean them up later. All right, so now we have our tail and the bottom part of our tail. Now it's correct. There we go. So we're gonna sew this to the bottom, and that's gonna give us the continuous tail unit. I'm gonna line this up. It should fit perfectly. All right, don't you love when the blocks are almost done and it starts taking shape and you can see all your efforts are paying off? In the Halloween quilt behind me, I didn't do all black cats. I did half black and then I did half orange because the Halloween fabrics were just so cute. I wanted to have some orange cats, but you could totally do all black cats for your Halloween quilt, or gray ones, or any color you want. So I just chose to alternate orange and black. All right, you can see, look at our cat. He just needs to get his tail sewn onto his body. So we're going to just sew that. It all fits together nice and neat. I am going to put a pin here just because it is kind of a larger piece and I don't want it to shift. Okay. All right. Let's press our little kitty. Okay. More stitch and flip. Okay, he's looking great. I love this black Halloween fabric with the orange different dots. I actually used it on the binding of the quilt because I just thought it tied the whole thing together. All right, look, he's in 2 parts now. Time to sew his head to his body. And if you notice, there's not like a seam that you would match up, but you do want to keep in mind that we want this little part here to connect. His neck right here, we want that to connect in his tail. So you may want to pull it back 1/4 inch and make sure those little parts are intersecting. And the same thing here with his tail. That one looks pretty good there. Give a little pin. Okay. Take out the pin. All right, our little kitty block is all finished. We're gonna press him and we're gonna have a little cat done. Just gonna roll it over like this and press toward his head. Oh, he's so cute. Gonna clapper him, smooth him right out. All right, so here's our kitty block. You can see his little head kind of matched up right there. That's really the only seams you need to worry about. And if your seam allowances are uniform throughout, it should be fine. So now what you can do is keep making cat blocks. If you want to make a whole quilt, all the instructions are in my quilt pattern, Charlotte's Garden. But something fun that maybe you don't have time to make a whole quilt, but you just really want to make a Halloween cat quilt block is in my book, Playful Pre-Cut Quilts. I give you all the instructions here for making a wall hanging using a 12-inch quilt block in the center. So my book uses all 12-inch quilt blocks. They're my favorite. So you could take any block, including the kitty block that we just made, which is the 12-inch block, and you could put it in the middle. And the pattern shows you how to use these half square triangles and make a fun little wall hanging. So if you don't have time for a quilt, you probably have time for a wall hanging. And who doesn't need a new Halloween wall hanging in their house? I hope you have found this helpful. I hope I have inspired you to make lots of cat quilt blocks and so lots of cat projects for your home like I love to. You can find all the details on my website, JediCraftGirl.com. Also, follow me on Instagram at JediCraftGirl. Please post and tag me in anything you make because I will repost and I will love and like all the things that you make that are mine. And I'm just happy that we get to connect in that way and share each other's love for cats and for quilting. So I will see you next time and thanks for joining.